Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagen. Suzuki does not suck. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Montreal Canadiens' first game of the season, their opening lineup. I'll have my guest Stephen Cohen join me, and we'll talk about the forward lines, the defense pairings, the goaltending, who made the team, who did not, who to look for in this season. Can't wait to have a great discussion on this episode of Next Shift.
Slafkofsky scores! Petrie wants it. With another save. Laine Hutson scores! Goes after it now. He's in. He's gone! All right,
Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagen. I have my guest Stephen Cohen here, and we're going to discuss the Montreal Canadiens opening night roster, who made the team, like we just talked about. Stephen, welcome to the show. As you know, the Montreal Canadiens went through 6 games, 4-2 in the preseason. They had players like Florian, Xhekaj, Owen, Beck, Engstrom sent back to Laval. They lost Blais to waiver wire to Toronto, and Kapanen looks like he cleared waivers. That means that Arber Xhekaj made the team, as well as Joe Veleno. Would love your take on the players that didn't make the team and the players that did, and if you have any comments from that perspective.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me back, Rick. So we had a show. I think the last show we did was forwards. We did defense first, and then we did our predictions. I think it was about a month ago or a little bit of just before training camp started. And I got to tell you, like, we look back at, what we said, before training camp started. And I think both you and I were so close with the exact final roster, but we were both really off by one player. To me, the surprise of the training camp, I expected for sure Kapanen to make the team. I expected him to be as part of one of the lines. I even expected him to play with Demidov, or to be an important piece to the puzzle, potentially even playing center, even though I think he's going to play wing. But Kapanen was definitely one of the players that I was very, very confident that was going to make the team. For me, the surprise of the camp, for sure, is Florian Xhekaj. So Florian Xhekaj, to me, I knew that coming into the camp, he was an amazing player in Laval last year. I thought in the training camp, he brought everything that you need to make this team, just like his brother did, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Arber made the club. He brought offense, his nose to the puck in the corners, toughness. I mean, everything that you want in a player that's going to start off to make a team. That's what Florian did. And for me, the surprise of the camp, 100%, was Florian Xhekaj. The fact that he is not on the team is disappointing, but understandable given the numbers, right? I do think that I think that he deserves to be on the team over another couple of players, but, you can't cut those players because they're under contract. So I understand that. And for me, those are the two, the two pieces that I'm very pleased about. And I'm sure Florian's going to be right back up with the team. The first injury that comes up, I think Florian's going to be the first person that gets called up. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, listen, I agree with you. I mean, everyone saw that Florian Xhekaj brought a certain level of compete to the game, and he was a solid player. But like you mentioned, there was really only one spot. There really was only one spot to take. The 13th forward had to be either Veleno or Blais, because they're not going to put a player like Florian Xhekaj and or Beck in the stands for the whole season. You can leave them in Laval and call them up, and they're waiver exempt, and that's simple. So it was really a fight between Kapanen, Beck, and Florian Xhekaj for one spot. I agree with you. Kapanen won that battle. I thought Beck performed very nicely, and he's not far away. And I thought Florian Xhekaj proved that, I believe he was a 4th-round pick, proved that he's going to be an NHL hockey player, which is great. He'll probably play some hockey games in the NHL this year, but more importantly, he'll get a lot of good ice time in Laval and fine-tune his game. So, no, I don't disagree with you. I thought he was more than the surprise. And unfortunately, I don't agree with you that there's 2 or 3 players that shouldn't be on this team compared to him. I think the team looks really solid from a top 12 players on the forward lines, including the 13th is Veleno being a solid backup who could play left wing, right wing, center. defensive, offensive, whatever you need. The only other comment I'll make is it depends in terms of who gets hurt, who's not playing well, will also drive who they bring up. I still believe in Owen Beck. I think Owen Beck brings a certain level of face-off skill, and he's just a good 200-foot player. And so from my perspective, I think it will depend what they're looking for. But definitely, I believe that if the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs and they're not fully healthy, that Florian Xhekaj will be in the lineup. So we'll see how it all progresses. There might be trades at the deadline. There might be changes to this team. There might be injuries. But for now, let's talk about the lines. Let's pull up the lines as we're talking about that. I'm gonna pull up the lines here.
I want to make while you pull up the lines, I want to just bring up one more comment. So I was a little disappointed. I saw glimpses. I want to make two comments. Saw glimpses of Blais in the last game, and he actually, he was quite impressive. He played a really good hockey game that last game. So it's a little disappointing. I think that the Canadiens could have snuck him onto the team. If I'm not mistaken, Rick, they had that extra roster spot. They could have snuck him onto the team, Veleno and Blais, to be on the roster, and protected him from getting snatched up in the waiver wire, which I believe he got snatched up by Toronto. So I think it's a little bit of a loss because I think he would be a really good player. I think, we have depth with Beck, like you said, and Xhekaj that can, are going to be the two forwards that get called up. And then my last comment is, between Xhekaj and Beck, and you compare the two players, I just feel that Florian is a little bit more ready. I felt that Owen Beck, I think that his ceiling is really high, but I think that there were just a couple of plays, just the confidence in the games that he played is just not there. When he had an opportunity to shoot the puck and really score, he elected to make an extra pass, and he screwed up the play. And so I want to just make a point that it was close, but Florian, for me, just beat Owen Beck out, and a little disappointed that the Canadiens, didn't protect that spot for Blais just to protect them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit disappointing. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs realized that a 13th forward of Blais is better than a 13th forward of Pezzetta, and I think they realized what Montreal was going to do. The only thing I'll say about that is, if a player of that nature is needed during the season, most likely Blais would not fill that role. It would end up being Florian Xhekaj getting brought up to the NHL. So if you need a player to bring energy to a line, forecheck, bring that kind of passion, you might as well have Florian Xhekaj come up. It's going to be a more opportunity for Florian Xhekaj to play in the NHL this year, and I think that's only good news for the Montreal Canadiens. So okay. I'm not as upset as you are. I mean, listen, it probably was a miscalculation. I don't think they thought he would get picked up and he'd be able to be a veteran presence in the AHL. Unfortunately for him, he has to go from his boyhood team of the Montreal Canadiens to his probably least favorite team of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but we'll not know. So, all right. So let's talk quickly about the lineup. There's, Marty made it pretty clear that there's a first line, a top line, and mostly because of the 3 years they've played together, as well as just the underlying analytics. That's Slafkofsky, Suzuki, Caufield. I don't think we need to talk much about them. I think they're slated to play the boatload of the minutes, the key minutes in the game. But let's talk about the other three lines, because it is kind of interesting what he's doing. In no particular order is what Martin St. Louis said, and this is the order that I put here is what the Montreal Canadiens posted on their website. So Bolduc is playing with Dach and Gallagher. Laine is playing with Evans and Anderson, and Newhook is playing with Kapanen and Demidov. Would love your take on the opening night roster. And what you see is positive, what you see is negative.
Yeah.
Would take some of your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. So I like it. I like it a lot. First of all, any line that Dach is on is the fourth line. And this is just my opinion. Okay. So first of all, the line that Demidov is on with the skill set that he brings to the table, in my humble opinion, that is for sure considered the second line. So, and yes, Marty's not going to say second. He's going to say second, third, and fourth line are all equivalent. There's no second, there's no third, and there's no fourth line. But we all know that Demidov is the highest ceiling and probably the the most talented player that anybody who plays near him their game is gonna be brought to another level because of his skill set. So now, so I like that line: Demidov, Kapanen, and Newhook. I like Newhook on the wing. I think that line brings a lot of speed to the line. Breaking up Anderson, Evans, and Gallagher. Listen, that line, as much as I like that line and they play well together, they really weren't gelling that much at the end of the season and in training camp. So you have, with Laine and Dach, you cannot have Laine and Dach together. They're both very slow players. So I understand splitting them up, and Gallagher, who digs in the corner together with Bolduc, I think, will help Dach out. And Laine with Anderson, of course, digging in the corner, and Evans, centering that line, I think I like the lines. I really do. I think he thought long and hard about it. He knew the deficiencies of both Laine and Dach, as it relates to back checking and speed. And, he didn't want to create defensive liabilities for the lines. And I think this is going to help both those players out. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll start with the positives in terms of what you said, which is, first of all, the line of Kapanen and Demidov and Newhook looks solid. I think that Newhook brings an aspect of speed, but I think the Kapanen and Demidov connection was obvious in the preseason, and I think that could be interesting moving forward. I don't know if Newhook will be on a line with Kapanen and Demidov all season. I see Bolduc potentially rolling into that spot. I think that line needs a goal scorer, and when Demidov could set up a guy like Bolduc who has one of the most elite shots and forechecks, it could be an interesting combination, but we'll see how that plays out. Again, I've listened to Marty, and I believe it too. I don't think there's a fourth line on this lineup. I disagree with you wholeheartedly that Dach is slow. Dach is not what I would call the quickest player, but if you watch him play hockey, he's not slow. He's actually very, very fast. Laine too has a level of speed. There's a difference between speed and quickness, and I think both of them lack a little bit of quickness for sure, and both of them definitely lack 200-foot games. Now, what I did notice in the preseason games, at least the last couple from Dach and the last couple from Laine, is that playing on these lines, they were focused on the defensive responsibility. So to your point, getting a Bolduc and Galley forechecking for Dach, getting an Evans and Anderson forechecking for Laine, I think he's done a great job of figuring out those lines. I don't think it would hurt to swap Bolduc and Newhook at one point. But again, I'm not the coach, and I'm not going to say that it won't work. I just don't know if Newhook has the goal scoring capability that Demidov will set him up maybe 10 times a game, and he might score one, which would be good. But hopefully we'll see how it goes. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this line lasts the whole season and becomes a true number 2 line. I agree with you that Demidov brings a level of skill set, but he's also 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have his own growing pains. So he's going to have his own inconsistencies. He's not the strongest defensively as well. So at this point, I like the lineup. Looking forward to the season. They do look stronger than October of 2024-25. So that's great. I also thought Veleno had a great camp. Should anyone get injured or not play to their capabilities, he's there to step in. So that's good. On the defense, what's your thoughts on the defense?
Yeah. So listen. For me, we'll see. I mean, we talked about this on our previous training camp show that both the top 5 are the top 5, and Struble and Xhekaj are the players that are gonna, flip-flop for that 6th spot. I think you're gonna see a lot of both of those players. I do like Struble. I think Struble deceptively is probably one of the toughest defensemen. I saw him compare, stand up to some of the other defensemen. In first impression, we think he's a small guy. He is not a small guy. He is a big, tough, solid defenseman. And he brings a level of skating. And I think he's a little bit more, responsible with the puck in his own zone and the breakout than Arber Xhekaj. But let's see. Arber Xhekaj, according to Marty, he's matured. He's, come into his own, and hopefully his game, we'll see how his defensive game is in his problem was giving up the puck in his own zone, the turnovers, losing his man in front of the net, which caused, scoring chances and giving up goals. So let's see what happens. Now, the other thing that I'm a little bit worried about that nobody's talking about is Noah Dobson. I mean, we just signed this guy to, what is it, like this huge contract, gave him a crap load of money. And so far, from what I've seen, again, I did not really pay close attention to his tape and his play from last year, but he does not look like even our top 4 defensemen. Let's see what happens. Apparently he's a star and he's got the size, but I know you're tough on Matheson, but right now, in my opinion, Matheson is a better defenseman than Dobson. So let's see. I'm glad that we still have Matheson, because from what I saw in training camp, I was not impressed with Dobson so far. Now, it might be that he was injured and he might, just be getting into training, into regular season form. What are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with you in terms of the difference between Matheson and Dobson is here's what I'll say. Dobson is a defenseman that comes with great analytics. He's got an elite shot. He's a good passer, is a redundant resource. And I mentioned that many times. If you have a Matheson, you don't need a Dobson. If you have a Dobson, you don't need a Matheson. They're very similar players, except Matheson skates a little bit better, but I think Matheson makes more mistakes. So Matheson probably makes the mistakes of Dobson, but they're very similar players. They're not what you'd call, solid defenseman that doesn't make any, errors. They take chances. They give up pucks. They get beat. Matheson uses his speed to get back a lot of the times. Dobson has speed, but not the Matheson type of speed. So I'm worried. I'm definitely worried about that partnership. I'm not a huge fan of the Matheson-Dobson pairing. I am a huge fan of Arber Xhekaj. I think Arber Xhekaj was always underrated. And the reason why he wasn't playing wasn't because of the mistakes he was making as much as the types of penalties he was getting. And I think if he can just learn how to play an aggressive style of defense without getting penalties, and him combined with Carrier, he's lost, 10-15% body fat. He looks really good out there. He's skating much better. I'm really excited for the season of Arber Xhekaj. I think he's going to take a step up. Ultimately, I would like to see Guhle play with Dobson and Hutson playing with Xhekaj, and then Matheson playing with Carrier. That's how I would like to see it play out. But and obviously, kudos to Struble, because I like Struble, and I think he's a player that can step in at a moment's notice. There's not going to be a loss. Almost any defenseman outside of Hutson, if you lose any one of those guys and you bring in Struble, it's not going to be a big, low, decrease is what, from that perspective. So that being said, I might throw Carrier in the mix. Carrier brings another level. When he's in the game, you can see that the Montreal Canadiens defense is just another level of strength. So looking forward to it. I think the Canadiens, that's going to be their position of strength. I agree with you. I thought about it a little bit since our last conversation. I agree with you that having that level of depth is important. You can't just trade Matheson. That leaves you with Engstrom as your backup. And, if you have one injury or two, then you're kind of really stuck. The problem here is that you have redundancy. And so Matheson, and the other problem is that Matheson's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So again, he'll need to sign a very team-friendly contract if he wants to stick around. If he doesn't, then you have guys like Engstrom and hopefully Reinbacher, who got hurt, So looking forward to that defense core. I think that's going to be a huge strength for the Montreal Canadiens.
So Rick, you didn't really answer my concerning question about Dobson. So you said you answered, as it relates to Matheson versus Dobson. You don't like the Matheson-Dobson pairing. I don't either, right? Frankly, I'm not sure I like Dobson with anybody at this point. I'm being a little more harsh than you. Right now, I'm concerned about Dobson. Now, do I like that we have Struble there? Yes. I'm just worried that we signed a very expensive player, and the player, if he doesn't perform, is going to be there, even though he doesn't perform based on what his salary is paying him. And I'm not worried one bit that we're not going to have 6 good defensemen or capable of having 6 good defensemen. I'm just worried that Dobson, if they don't perform well, I don't know if I would blame Matheson, so to speak. I've seen Dobson make a lot of mistakes in the preseason that I'm concerned about. I don't know if you want to just talk a little bit
Yeah, I
about
mean, listen,
what you saw.
I
Yeah,
mean, so I agree that Dobson didn't look great, and he does make a lot of mistakes. Okay, but so does Matheson. Okay, that's what I've
agreed.
been saying all along. The difference is that if you look at Dobson's pure analytics, so advanced stats, he is one of the best 5-on-5 defensemen in the NHL. So his team scores more. His team has more control of the puck. He's a strong passer of the puck. Just from an advanced analytics perspective, Noah Dobson is a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. That's how good he is. Now, from an eye test, I agree with you that he doesn't look like he's a step above others. He looks a bit. He's never to me looked like an aggressive defenseman. He's never really used his size physically like a Xhekaj. But he has a really strong stick. He has a good first pass. He blocks shots. And like I said, his line mates do well when he's on the ice. So that's what you have to hope for. Again, I'm not a huge fan. I never said I was a huge fan of the Dobson trade. What I said was when they traded for Dobson, who is a right shot defenseman, and they needed that, they don't need Matheson anymore because now we have two of them. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Matheson. I've never been shy about that. This player is similar, not as bad, but similar. So he's going to frustrate you the same way. He's going to do good things the same way. Different speed, different style, but that's what he's going to be. It's a redundant resource. There's two of them now. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. They can't be on the same line too long. We'll see how long it lasts. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it'll work. They play differently. They're not exactly the same, but we'll see how it all plays out. So yeah, that's my comment about that. I'm not a fan here either. I'm not a fanboy of Dobson. I didn't hate the trade because, like I said, I think the Canadiens needed a right shooting defenseman that they can feel comfortable with. They had Mailloux, but he was very young. This guy has played 5 or 6 years. He has stats, advanced stats that show that he is an elite defenseman. Okay. So we got to hope that those stats play out over an 82-game season.
All right.
But he didn't look great, like I said,
Yeah, I mean, I was just going by the eye test. I was not looking at the stats. Obviously, the stats, I mean, the Canadiens would not have pulled off that trade and given that kind of money without the obvious stats that are rock solid.
I mean, he's had good seasons too. He had 71 points one season. He's got a very solid shot. He's not a bad player. It's just, neither is Matheson, really, if you think about it. Matheson's not a bad player. They just make a lot of mistakes, right? So,
well, I mean, Matheson, I think we all agree was in the wrong. I mean, he's not a 1 and 2. He was trying to do too much on the team. He had too much ice time. I think if you put him back at the number 4 or number 5 slot and you reduce his ice time and his responsibility and he knows his role, this guy can be really an important player for the Canadiens. He showed me that in the playoffs. And let's look at him at the beginning of the season. So that's it. I'm excited, Rick. I'm excited about the season. This is super exciting. And
Monty looked good in the last preseason game. Dobes didn't give up a goal, so you can't say anything bad about Dobes.
I love Dobie.
I know you do. So looking forward to the game. So Montreal Canadiens Wednesday night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. You want to do a prediction already, or you want to hold off on the first game prediction?
No, I'm gonna. So the game's in Toronto. Is it to start in Toronto?
The first game of the season is in Toronto, and they're on back-to-back.
Yeah, so that's a tough test. I mean, I'm surprised that the Leafs didn't just have Pizzetta in just for that first game, turn into a
maybe they'll put in Blais.
Yeah, they'll put in Blais. That's not going to really matter. But listen, I think that it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think the Canadiens win 5-4 in overtime. That's my call.
All right. Well, I'm going to hold off on predictions. I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be slightly lower. I think it'll be somewhere in that 3-3, 4-3 kind of range, 3-2 range. Let's say I hope the Montreal Canadiens pull it off. I'll leave it at that. The Canadiens do have a back-to-back game the next night against the Detroit Red Wings. There's going to be 17 of those this season. So they go Toronto, then Detroit back to back. We'll probably see Monty start the first one and Dobes start the second. We'll see how it all plays out. Looking forward to it. It goes according to plan. I mean, obviously, the Canadiens got off to a very poor start last season. I think they won the first game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think it was 1-0 or something like that with some 50 shots or so against Montembeault in Montreal. But we'll see how this one goes. The martyrless Toronto Maple Leafs against the Montreal Canadiens 25-26 edition. Looking forward to it.
So the Leafs not only lost they lost two players, right? One retired.
Pacioretty
retired, and then they lost yeah, but who did they get to replace? Who did they replace?
Got a few players. I mean, yeah, they have some good players. They got Waugh, they got Joshua. So they got a few players to kind of replace those players, but ultimately the top line is going to be Nyes with Matthews and Domi, actually. And the way the Toronto Maple Leafs kind of set up their lines is two players. It seems to be like two players on each line are kind of solid, and then they kind of rotate in the third player. They kind of make it in pairs, which is an interesting strategy.
It's either going to be really, really good or it's going to be really, really bad for them. So let's see. It's going to be interesting. So
game one is Wednesday night. The NHL season starts tomorrow. The first couple of games start tomorrow. And then on Wednesday night, the Montreal Canadiens play the Toronto Maple Leafs. Anything else before we go?
Nope. Let's go, Habs.
Well, thanks for joining the show, Steven. That's it for us. That's it for Next Shift. Suzuki does not suck. Talk to you guys soon.
Slafkofsky scored! Go! With another save. Hutson scores! Goes after it now.